Welcome. I would like to start by saying that there are over 300 people signed up for this webinar. And so two things about that. It looks like not all 300 are here, so that's probably good. But I just want to say, I'm just going to mute everybody to make sure we don't get background noise. But two things about that. One is that there are a whole lot of people interested in the lost tools and starting level 1. And so probably some are in your area. It just occurred to me that if you would like to find out about other people using lost tools of writing where you live, probably the best way for you to do that is to host a writing workshop. And we have a CiRCE website has a place where you can fill out a form and request a presenter, and CiRCE will advertise for you and take registrations. And that's a good way to gather people from your own community to find people around you who are doing what you're doing. How's my volume now? Is it better? Somebody said my volume is low. Can you hear me okay now? Okay. You may need to turn up your own volume. So, okay, thanks, Katie. Okay, good, Brian, thanks. Hey. The other thing about having 300 people in here, I don't think that many will be here, but so let me just say how we're going to work this today. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll be as loud as I can. Sorry, I'm just thinking of 10 things at once. So I'm gonna flash through my presentation today, and I think it'll take about 30 minutes. And then I'm going to leave a half an hour for Q&A. The second half of this will be Q&A. So the other thing is that, I'm sorry, I've got a technical thing here I need to take care of, and I'm having trouble doing that. Can you? I think I need a co-host. So anyway, the other thing is that I'm going to probably not look at the chat for the first 30 minutes. And Patty is going to look at it for me. The lovely Patricia Bianco is here, and we'll be checking that in case of emergency. But after the first 30 minutes, I'll be able to read the chat. And really, if there are only about 40 people here, I'll probably be able to keep up with it myself. But just in case, we're going to have help. So, all right, I'm trying to make someone else co-host. I'm not sure how that works. Do we need that now, or can we wait and see if we need it? Because I can't figure it out. I think maybe we could let me just get started and let's see how things go. Does that work? Okay, I'm having technical difficulties, sorry. All right, let's just go. Okay, so this webinar is called From Box to Essay 1. So in fact, we're going to start where at the place where you haven't even opened the box yet, and you don't need your book yet. And part of the reason for this webinar is that there are things that you need to do before you open your book. So I would recommend if you could just listen and follow along with me. I'll tell you when we get to the book, if you want, and I'll tell you when we get to the first page of the book. But we're going to start pre-book. We're going to start with just the box right now. Okay. And I'll tell you, first of all, I'll give you, I said, welcome. I'm so glad all of you are here. I'm really excited to have 300 people signed up for this webinar, because I love to see lost tools in the hands of as many students as possible, because I've seen it change non-thinkers into thinkers, non-writers into writers, and we need more of that in this world. So the teacher's guide will help you understand why we work the way we do, and it may add some more detail. So read it whenever you can. So this is for those of you who have to teach tomorrow. And you can go back to the teacher's guide as needed. So you'll know at least what to do and some of why we're doing this just from today's webinar. But a teacher the other day told me I read the teacher's guide, or at least the introduction, and then I taught some, and then I read it again, and then I taught some and I read it again. And that's an excellent way to do things, because you'll understand it more after you've done some of it. You'll learn more about the theory of lost tools as you practice it. So the more you practice, the more you'll see the theory. And then when you go back and read about it, it'll make a lot more sense. So don't feel like you have to read everything right now. I hope it's okay if I say that. Okay, so for today's agenda, we'll talk first about the background of lost tools. What is the purpose of this thing that we're doing? And then I'll show you some resources, a list, so you'll know that if you miss something today, it's okay. So you can just relax and listen. And then we'll go through all the steps from box to like closed box to essay 1, to the end of essay 1. And then we'll review those steps really quickly. And then we'll have about half an hour for Q&A. And then I'll repeat the resources. I'll have that same slide also at the end so that you can see when we're finished, all the places you can go to get help, because we do have a lot of resources, free resources, places you can go any day. If you have just a quick question, we have a place for you to get an answer no matter what day it is. So first, though, I would like to say why we are here. The goal of our instruction is love. Lost Tools provides our children practice in how to love their neighbors. It provides us with practice in how to love our children. The goal of walking this path, that's what a curriculum is, a path, and the goal of walking this path is to learn to listen to others, to the other side of a story, so that we can walk humbly. It is so that we will be able to think first and make decisions later, that we will be slow to judge. It will also give us practice it'll give us practice in those two things, but help us to gain the ability to show mercy to those who are on the other side of an issue, on the other side of a position from where we are. And if we can do all these things, we can act more justly. So the purpose of this is to cultivate things in our students. It's not about information, it's about transformation. And that's true of all of classical education. So what is it that we want to see? We talk about gardening sometimes as a metaphor for education. We can't, it's not a concrete garden. We can't just, chip pieces off of our students and make them be what we want them to be. They're growing, they're independent from us. And so we want to help them cultivate habits. And so I'd like to, because we need to talk about assessment a little bit as we talk about the purpose of Lost Tools, because if we teach one way and assess another way, as most conventional education does, and we don't line those up with each other and make them coherent and harmonious with each other, then we are often not teaching what we think we're teaching. So the purpose of Lost Tools is to cultivate habits of mind in our students. Like we just talked about, we want the habit of listening and humbly, and the habit of being slow to make judgments, and the habit of acting justly. So how do we get there? We can't just say, here's the goal. So what if I just want to start with this metaphor then. What if our goal is good health, or a certain weight as part of our good health? So will it help us more if we have the habit of checking the scale every week? If we check our weight once a week, will that make us healthy? Or if we check our habits of eating every day, will that make us healthy? Let's think about which one is going to cultivate what we want. I think we're probably leaning towards the first one, because those are causes of the second. So let's look at it as writing. Or something in school, the habits of mind. Do we check the habits of mind every day of our students? Or do we want them in the habit, we want ourselves in the habit of checking their grades every week? Because if we're teaching for grades and we're assessing for grades, we are teaching the habit of checking grades every week without attending to the causes that will give us the effects we want. So we need to cultivate habits of mind in our students every day. And if we focus on grades, actually, I really would love to say if we give grades in this class, we undercut our purpose. I'm really out on a limb there, I know. But I'll just say that, and then we'll see what happens. Thank you, Brian, for smiling. So when we assess our students, the goal of our assessment is love. We are coaching a skill with writing, and we need to assess accordingly. If we tell our student 87 at piano practice of piano lessons, see you next week, it teaches us nothing, it gains us nothing, it profits us nothing. So we need to assess the actions and not the results. I've been thinking about this a lot. We need to assess obedient practice, like 30 minutes, not 20 minutes. If I ask for 30, that's the kind of obedience I mean, like just fulfilling the practice, and not the quality of the output. So we need to assess the causes of a good whatever we want, not the effects of it. We need to assess the process and not the targets. And what I've realized recently is there've been a lot of talk about grades over the summer. And of course, sometimes we work in places that require it. So I'm not really sure what the workaround is there, but there might be one. And I implore you to find it. Because if we assess for the quality of what our students are doing, if a grade equals the quality of their work, then we're asking something sometimes that for something they have no control over. When your students, I don't know if you've ever been around anybody the first 2 weeks of their learning how to play trumpet, but it's terrible. And they have no control over what it sounds like. But if they keep being told, change your mouth, move your elbow, sit up straight, bend your knee, whatever you have to do to make it sound better. If we coach them like that, and those are the things they practice, quality gets better. But a tennis coach can't say, put the ball here. Nope, you didn't do it. Put the ball here. Nope, you didn't do it. Put the ball here. So you can't just look at the target. You have to look at what are the things that make them hit that target? Because actually the target is the daily habit. It's not the grade at the end of the semester or the end of the year. I talked to somebody, one of my level 2 intensive people yesterday. I'm probably talking too much about this, but she said that, well, I have to put a grade on a transcript because the college needs it. Yes, the college needs it, but your student doesn't. So at the end of the semester or the end of the year, you can put the grade on the transcript, but for the daily work and the weekly work, the student just needs the daily feedback to gain the habits that she needs to do the work well, to cultivate the habits of mind that she wants. So that's the goal. Okay, I'll stop preaching. Here are the resources that you will have after this webinar ends. So if I go too fast, or you have questions that don't get answered yet, or I set aside, we'll have almost half an hour just for questions, but just in case, just so you can relax and know all this is coming. This webinar is being recorded, I believe. Does everybody see that it says it's being recorded? Somebody help me. Okay, thank you, Patty. So it is, because I was famous a couple of years ago for the do-over series, because I kept forgetting to hit record, and I had to do everything twice. So I could record it the second time. Okay, so we're all right. So this also is the first in a series of webinars that'll be free to everybody about lost tools. I think the next one is about issues and different levels, but I'm not sure. That is coming up in October. But anyway, this is free. The access will be free later, and there are more to come. Also, I'm very excited to announce that our level 1 curriculum has new videos. So if you have purchased the complete set, you will now have access to the new videos that are 8 years newer than the other ones. They're done in the new style. They are taught mimetically. And so you'll have 2 examples of all the lessons in your book, but then you'll have 2 more examples of everything. You do have 2 more examples of everything in the videos. I believe they'll be posted by tomorrow in Vimeo. And I believe they'll be very helpful. So that's exciting. That's coming. You'll have those to look on. So you'll have a lot of instruction for every lesson in those, more than the old ones were. And those are 8 years old, and we understand this better now. So we also have a forum every day. Anytime you have a question, you can just pop in, type it, somebody will type you an answer. And so 2 places you can do that. You can do it on Facebook if you want to. It's called the Lost Tools of Writing Mentor. If you don't like Facebook, you can search online for IO groups. It used to be Yahoo groups. But if you go to the IO groups page and it says, what group do you want to join? And you tell it LTW Mentor, then you'll get in their email list. And so you can ask questions and get answers there. And both of these are, you get Lost Tools answers from people finishing or finished with the CiRCE apprenticeship, which is a 3-year teacher training program in education and Christian classical education and classical rhetoric, which is what the Lost Tools of Writing is. And we also have some pre-recorded answers to frequently asked questions on CiRCE's Lost Tools of Writing YouTube channel. And then every month there's a free Lost Tools webinar that's just Q&A the whole hour. It's the 3rd Thursday at 3 if you're in Eastern time. So if you're in Mountain time, that's at 1 o'clock on the 3rd Thursday of every month, or noon on Pacific, which is a little early during the school year. The next one is August 17th. So that's next week. And it's just an hour. You can pop in an hour of, I show up with no plans. So whatever your questions are, that's what we talk about. And those are not recorded because we can't promise what anything will be, the content. We never know what it's going to be. But you're welcome to listen for an hour or pop in for 5 minutes and ask one question and leave about level 1, 2, 3, or whatever. So we have resources. All right, so let's get going. This is kind of the root of Lost Tools, or classical rhetoric, because we have common problems when we write. Our problems are common to man. These are the things that we have when we try to do our own writing. This is what we hear from our students. Things like, I don't know where to start. I can't think of anything to say. I don't have enough material to write about. I don't have anything original to say. Or we hear things like, problems like, I'm not sure what the introduction should be or the conclusion. I don't know how long this paper is supposed to be. I don't know what should be in it, what to put in, what to leave out. I don't know how to organize the ideas that I have. Or we hear problems like spelling, capital letters, punctuation, vocabulary, sentence structure, syntax, all those, how do I make it sound more interesting? How do I make it things like that? So the problems that we have when we write fall into these 3 groups. And these are the 3 canons, the first 3 canons of classical rhetoric. So you'll see the first one is all about the problem of thinking of something to say. So the first, every Lost Tools essay has 3 parts, 3 lessons. We always have this 3-part essay cycle. So the first part we call invention, and it teaches something about how to think of something to say. The second part we call arrangement, and it teaches about organizing or maybe adding another piece of the outline so that every time the essay gets longer. And the third lesson is about expression, which we call elocution. And actually those things right here on the list are things we do not teach. These are more prerequisites for Lost Tools of Writing. So we take these and we build on them. We teach, there are some editing lessons about verbs, especially, and because they're so important. A great verb will fix a bad sentence normally, cover a multitude of problems. And but there are also schemes and tropes that help express our ideas better. Things like similes and metaphors. The simile is the root of all of the tropes, and parallelism, which can make our writing more clear. In fact, I subscribe to a grammar newsletter, and I got an email today about parallelism. So we need that to be clear and effective in our writing. So those are the kinds of lessons you'll see in elocution. So Lost Tools falls into this pattern. We have first a week of invention, then arrangement, then elocution. You might notice that this middle set of things is about, we could also say that that's about the structure of writing. And the bottom section could be called style. You may have had some lessons in structure and style. And if you have used IEW before you've come to Lost Tools of Writing, you'll see how they dovetail very nicely. This invention part of Lost Tools, we don't see, I'm not laid out this way in maybe any other writing curriculum that I know of. It's all material logic to make sure that students have something to say that are true statements. So if you have had IEW, then you can see how these overlay each other, that the structure and style more, there's some invention, but but the subtitle is structure and style for IEW. And then we have these three canons in Lost Tools, and they will dovetail nicely. At first, you might want to set aside IEW for the first couple of essay cycles, just till you kind of see the pattern of Lost Tools, and then make sure you're using everything from IEW that you already know about structure and style. All right. So the Lost Tools lessons are designed to teach the answers to the problems that we have when we write. There are two more canons in classical rhetoric that we don't teach. It's about memory and delivery. But especially in the higher levels of Lost Tools, you are writing addresses that could be delivered as speeches. We don't even call them essays at that point. Okay, end of background, beginning of story, as Louis Armstrong says in High Society. Maybe let me look at the chat for just a second and see. Where we have. Okay. All right. See where we are. All right. So let's start Lost Tools. Step one, read a story. We use literature or a story from history or a text from science or something else, often literature, to find characters that we can borrow to practice classical rhetoric. So we're lifting these characters out of literature to practice classical rhetoric. We are not writing about literature. This is a good preparation for thinking about literary analysis. Lost Tools is, but this is not literary analysis, and it's not literary writing. We don't write in the eternal present as though the characters are always, when we open the book, Tom Sawyer's always doing the same thing on page 43. So we don't write about it that way, though. We're pretending that he is a real person and that he did these things in the past, and we're going to think for ourselves about what he did and see what we think about that. So the first thing we need to do before you open the box is read a story. And then the next thing we need to do, I'll give an example, but the next thing we're going to do is who's in the story and what did they do? So here's an example. If we use the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, we read the story of Goldilocks, which I won't read now because I assume you know it. But then the next thing we're going to do is ask who's in the story. And so we have a list. You can look down the left: Goldilocks, Mama Bear, Papa Bear, Baby Bear. And then what did they do? I don't want to read to you too much, but I know there are people on phones not looking at this, not able to look at the screen probably. But so just as a sample of this, a few things Goldilocks did. She entered the house. She tasted porridge. She ate a bowl of porridge, not a bowl. She sat in the chairs. She broke the little ones. She tested the beds. She laid down to rest in one bed, and she ran away. Mama Bear cooked porridge. She walked while the porridge was cooling. She went home. Papa Bear walked while the porridge was cooling. He went home. He said someone had tasted his porridge. Baby Bear walked. He said someone had eaten his porridge. He said someone had broken his chair. He said someone was asleep in his bed. And we're always wondering, every time we look at the people around us, certainly every time we speak to two of our children together, we're wondering what people should do, what people should have said. What should I have said that? Should he have done that? So this is oriented towards the nature of humans and human life and the decisions that we need to make in real life. That's why this is classical rhetoric. This isn't literature. So when we write this character action list like this, we're writing actions that somebody chose to do, because we're always wondering whether they should have done that. We watch a movie and we say, tell her before it's too late, say something. Or we say, don't open that door, or whatever it is, don't walk away, don't take your phone off the hook, don't, we're always deciding what people should have done or wondering what they should have done. So we're wondering about the decisions people make, because we wonder about our own decisions. And eventually we want to be able to use the practice of lost tools to make our own wise decisions. So the purpose of this is to cultivate wisdom in our students. So we're looking at what decisions people chose to make, what people chose to do, what people decided to do. And so you'll notice I wrote in Goldilocks, she laid down to rest in one of the beds. I did not put she fell asleep. That is something that happened, and we can certainly think about it, but it's not one of the decisions that she chose, because I think she may have fallen asleep by accident. I don't know about you, but I can't make myself fall asleep. I can make the conditions right for it. But fall asleep is something that happens to her, or falling off of a ladder, something that happens, or hitting a post with the car, or whatever it is, hitting a bump. Those are not volitional actions. And so we don't use those in the character action list. We're listing the actions that people chose. So we're always wondering what they should have done. So we're going to ask what they should have done. And that is a normative question. If you've read Norms and Nobility, it's tough going, but I highly recommend it. It says that students need a normative education. They need to know what norms are. What should they do? What is normal in the sense of what are people supposed to do? So now we're choosing one pair, one character, one action. There were several things there. I'm wondering if she should have gone. I'm wondering if she should have gone into the house. I wonder if she should have laid down in that bed. And just for another example, let me show you a second character action list from a different story. In The Emperor's New Suit, the characters are the emperor, the minister, the man at the parade, the son at the parade. The emperor hired weavers, checked the progress, paraded in the suit, and right away you think, not sure if he should have done that. The trusted minister, he checked the progress, said it was beautiful, not sure if he should have done that. The man cheered at the naked emperor, not sure about that. Child at the parade said the emperor had nothing on at all. So we're going to choose one of these and take 2 steps. So back to Goldilocks. We're wondering, should Goldilocks have entered the house? That's the one I picked. Your students might pick something different. Then you won't get bored as a teacher, because if you tell this to 12 kids, they all have different ideas, which is great. Then you don't get bored and they think for themselves. So maybe we're wondering, should the emperor have paraded in his new suit? But the second step is to convert the should question to an issue, whether Goldilocks should have entered the house, or whether the emperor should have paraded in his new suit. So these are past tense, what they should have done in the past. And there's no punctuation in the whether statement in the issue, because it's not a whole sentence or a question. It's just a dependent clause. The whole sentence would be, I'm wondering whether the emperor should have paraded in his new suit. So this is just a piece of a sentence. And the thing about turning into an issue, oops, we didn't open the book yet. Let's go back for a second. The thing about turning this into an issue is that we open the possibility for contemplation, because if we say, should she have done that? Right away, everybody says, nope, or yeah. And we don't have time to think about it. But if we say whether she should have entered the house, it opens the door to thinking on both sides. Maybe she should have, maybe she shouldn't, maybe reasons she should have, reasons she shouldn't. And the door was open. That's something interesting. And it almost compels us to think on both sides when we don't just have a simple yes or no question. So we're going to start with a should question, convert it to an issue. And now we're ready to open the book. So if you would like to open your book, I would recommend the student book, page 3. You don't have to open your book. I'll walk you through all of it. But if you are interested in following the book, it's page 3 in the student book. And it's just a blank page, which is why that's not where we started. But that blank page is a chart at the top. It says affirmative, negative, interesting. So now we have our whether statement, the issue that we put at the top of this, whether Goldilocks should have done this. And now we can think of affirmatives, why she should have, negatives, why she should not have, and more interesting information like the door was open. That's kind of interesting. People went for a walk and left their door open, either unlocked or standing open. I'd have to look at the story again. But because this is affirmative, negative, interesting, it has the acronym ANI. And so we call this an Annie chart, like the girl's name, Annie. So now we have a place to think on both sides. Let's see what that looks like. Here is a filled out Annie chart, whether Goldilocks should have entered the house. We have 10 affirmatives, 10 negatives, 10 interestings. You can see the whole page, right? Can you see my whole screen? You're not seeing the people I'm seeing, are you? Okay, good. Thank you. So a few affirmatives, she wanted to, she was curious, she may have been hungry. The door was open, no one was home. And here we get a little bit of speculation. She probably smelled the food and wanted to taste the food. And that's a reasonable inference. We don't know that for sure about her, but we know about looking in a place we've never been to before. Or she wanted to see what else was there. And then back to some facts from the story. She didn't know it was the bear's house and no one was watching her. So reasonable inferences are okay. Like if we're looking at the Emperor's New Suit, we know things about parades. Negatives, no one was home. She didn't know it was a bear's house. It could have been dangerous. She didn't think about danger. And then we have some interesting things. There are 3 of the bears. Papa Bear was the biggest bear. All of Papa Bear's things were the biggest things. He had a bowl, he had a chair and a bed. Mama Bear's things were the middle-sized ones. Baby Bears were the smallest. Papa Bear had the extremes. Papa Bear had the hottest porridge, the biggest chair, and the hardest bed. And we do not put those on the same line. That's 3 separate items. So we don't ever want an and in the Annie column. Another thing about this, all the affirmatives may have given her no good reason to go into that house, but she did it. So maybe these are just the reasons that she did it. Maybe they're not the reasons that she should have done it. But here's an example of how this helps us to see somebody else's perspective if we disagree. We think we disagree with them, because we probably come to this with a hypothesis of which side we'll choose. But completing the thinking is testing our hypothesis. So don't decide yet. So this is the first invention lesson, to fill out the Annie chart on page 3. And we should have 10 in each column, 30 items total. Don't skip. Uh-oh. I'll turn that off. Okay, so we've finished with invention. Now it's time to start arrangement. We can't start arrangement without the Annie. So we used an issue to start invention. Now we need the full Annie to start arrangement. So week 2, so we're on week 2, the beginning of arrangement. If you meet with your students once a week, this will be the second week. If you have them 2 hours a day for 5 days a week, then you won't take 3 weeks to do this, but you might take 3 weeks if you just see your students an hour a week. If you're homeschooling, you probably see your students an hour a week. Or maybe if it's your own children, you see them 2 hours a day for 5 days. And Brian, you get yours all day, every day, all day, every day, all day. So you might not take 3 weeks to do this. So in the affirmative column, we're going to pick our 3 best reasons, 3 favorites, and these are mine. Somebody will pick 3 different ones. It doesn't matter. We just all have to think. We're practicing our own thinking. And that's the goal. So I chose, she was curious. The door was open and no one was home. That's probably why she went in. And then the negative is, could have been dangerous. She just did what she felt like and she fell asleep there. We don't need the interesting column yet. We will later. So we need it. Just not right this minute. So now I have 3 on each side. And that helps me think, do I choose the affirmative or do I choose the negative? And I chose negative. So this is arrangement part B. We pick a side. Goldilocks, I picked Goldilocks should not have entered the house. So now we pull what we need from the Annie. The reasons. Could have been dangerous. She just did what she felt like and she fell asleep there. That was bad. So now I have a conclusion. Goldilocks should not have entered the house. It could have been dangerous. She just did what she felt like doing and she fell asleep there. And now that I have that much, I can think of an introduction. I believe writing is hard for a lot of people because we try to introduce a thing we don't know. We can't introduce a person we don't know. We can't introduce ideas we don't know. This is our thinking order. We must go through this thinking order to be able to think up an introduction at the end. Next, we go to arrangement C, and this is our presentation order. So we're going to fill in this template that the book gives us. And when our material's in there, we have an outline. So my thesis is Goldilocks should not have entered the house. Now the introduction is at the top. I'm going to give my audience a cue in the introduction. How many reasons will I give you? That was on the previous page too. 3. The number 3 was in the introduction at the bottom over there. Now it's at the top. And then the exposition and the introduction, we expose our reasons. We're not going to explain them yet, but we're going to cut them into words or phrases. Dangerous, felt like it, fell asleep. Because if we cut them here, we make room for better sentences later. So we can't skip these 2 arrangement steps. Because in the first one, the job is making decisions about what we're using. And here, the only decision is we're just chopping. How much to chop? Chop as much as you can. So the proof, dangerous, felt like it, fell asleep. And this will be a lot longer in the next essay. And then our conclusion, Goldilocks should not have entered the house because she was dangerous. She felt like it, she fell asleep. So now that we have the outline, we go to the essay. And this is our first elocution lesson. It's not even in the book because we just take those words and make sentences out of them. So here's what our essay looks like. Goldilocks should not have entered the house for 3 reasons. See the thesis and the enumeration there. It was dangerous. She followed only her feelings and she fell asleep there. The first reason Goldilocks should not have entered the house is that it was dangerous. The second reason Goldilocks should not have entered the house is that she followed only her feelings. The third reason Goldilocks should not have entered the house is that she fell asleep there. Goldilocks should not have entered the house because it was dangerous. She followed only her feelings and she fell asleep there. So that is the first essay of the Lost Tools of Writing. And we may have taken 3 weeks to get there. And you are wondering, what just happened? I asked you for a skyscraper and all you did was dig a hole in the ground. And that's exactly what we just did. Because the complete outline at the end of this book at level 1 is an outline for a doctoral thesis. It's a skyscraper. When you're writing your doctoral thesis, all the parts will be longer. But even in Lost Tools, we have a 10-paragraph essay at the end. But we do dig a hole at first because we need a foundation that is really, really strong. And these 5 sentences you just looked at will be in every essay that students ever write for the rest of their lives. And you'll be surprised at how many mistakes they'll make in those 5 sentences. So that's the first essay. So I'm going to do a quick review of what we just did. I'm going to go back through here. Beginning of story. The steps for writing the essay. First, we have a story that we've read. Then we make a character action list. We ask who was in the story and what they did. And even if you're not going to write an essay, this is a useful exercise to do with your students. If you say, remember that book we read 5 months ago? Let's make a character action list. You've reviewed the whole story and you didn't have to give them a stupid test. This is a lot more fun, especially in a group. Okay, so we made the character action list. We chose one. We turned it into a should question. Should Goldilocks have entered the house? We converted it to an issue, whether Goldilocks should have entered the house. We filled out an Annie chart for that issue, whether she should have entered the house. It's the other example. We looked at both sides. We chose 3 on both sides. That helped us to know the affirmative and the negative better. We picked the negative side. We pulled our reasons out and then we put them in a conclusion, and that allowed us to write an introduction. We flipped it from the thinking order to the presentation order. we cut the outline points into word or phrase each time, and then we use that to write an essay. And just for example, you'll see she followed only her feelings. That's much more clear in elocution than it ever was. I mean, we chose that reason because that was trouble, but it wasn't really explained in the outline. The outline's kind of notes to self. I mean, if you're not in a writing class, nobody will check your outline. But anyway, in the expression, it gets fleshed out in the elocution. Okay. So that's what happened. And now we have another, okay, not 30 minutes, but we have 20 minutes. Oops, for questions. Sorry. So nobody has questions. But I welcome any questions about the story, the character action list, the issue, the Annie, the 3-part arrangement, and then the essay. So this will get you through the first 3 weeks of school. And then you'll have 11 videos. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So for the first essay, they're not really doing the second 2 parts, arrangement and elocution, or they're just so simple that it doesn't feel like they're doing.
They're so simple, it feels like they're not doing much.
Okay.
Because they did all 3. If you want to go back to, arrangement A was to highlight the 2 sides of the Annie. That was the first step for arrangement. And then arrangement B was to pull the parts out and in our thinking order and that's on pages 4 and 5 in the student book, I think, where you have a place to write all the parts you've pulled out. And then arrangement C is to create the outline. And then you go to elocution. And there's not even a lesson for that in the book because it's just take a word and put it in a whole sentence. But that is that 5-sentence essay was the elocution.
Okay.
Lesson for that week. So the questions are, when do we focus on making proofs parallel? In essay 4, the editing lesson is parallelism. Parallel phrases and clauses, and we apply that in the main reasons. And that's where we make the main reasons parallel for the first time. And then from essay 4 on, you'll write your main reasons in a parallel form. I don't think the book says to apply that to main reasons, but that is what we need to do, because actually I learned from Dr. Bianco that it's actually not grammatically correct to write a list that's not parallel. And next question is how to talk about, well, actually, yeah, sorry. It'll be essay 2 has parallel words, but we don't get to parallel phrases and clauses until essay 4. And that's where they will start to make their main reasons parallel. And then how to assess for the elocution. Yeah, it's a good idea. This is not in the book, but revision is really important. And I tell my students, write, rest, and rewrite. It came from a parody on Elon Musk and SpaceX, where he launches his rockets, they land, and he relaunches them. So it's launch, land, relaunch. And so I do the write, rest, and rewrite. And I can't sing, so you don't want to hear that. But I make my students write, and then I tell them to put their papers down and then come back later to check. And so that happens in a personal one-on-one coaching that I don't know how to turn this off. Sorry, the one-on-one coaching. So if you're one student may be having trouble with a colon and semicolon, and maybe nobody else in the class is. And so you'll just deal with that one student one-on-one. But if you see that several students have trouble with the same thing, then you can address that in the next class. Did that help, Katie? Well, Teresa, good. Thanks, Katie. So here's what I say. If you don't, thank you for asking that question, Teresa, because usually Maybe we should go back and look at an Annie. Do you want to look at this one again? We can go back to the, yeah, let's look at this Annie. Some of this stuff is not very good. I mean, right? Papa Bear had the hottest porridge. I mean, I don't know if that's relevant to whether she enters the house. I mean, it doesn't seem like it at all, does it? And maybe it's not. But to use another metaphor here, invention is filling this hopper. This Annie is a bucket. It's the hopper that we're taking into a gold mine. And we want gold. And sometimes people say, I'm in the mine and I don't see any gold. I saw this one little fleck on the wall and I put it in the hopper and that's all I got. So what we need to say is put the dirt in too. You just have to dig from the walls. You have to take the dirt and the gold and put it into the bucket. And an arrangement is when we sort it out. We're going to leave a lot of dirt behind, but if you don't pull it off the walls, you won't see the gold that's behind the dirt. And so don't rate your answers, because we can put stuff in there. Sorry, I can't turn that off. We can put stuff in the Annie that is the dirt, or that we think we won't use. And so usually if people don't have enough, it's because they're rating their answers and they say this isn't good enough for the Annie. And the answer is everything is good enough for the Annie. In fact, I'll show you this in the Emperor's paraded in his new suit. The suit makers asked for silk and they asked for gold. And if you look at my I column, I put the silk was first made in China. Yes, Stephanie, I'll do that next. And people raise silkworms now. That's probably the dirt. But the thing is that if we start with that, then it can lead us to other things. And I usually think about in the story of Princess and the Pea, if we think about the Princess and the Pea, one thing we'll learn later is to compare two characters. So if we compare the princess to the queen, you might say they both have feet. And that sounds like the dirt that you don't, you're not going to put in the essay. But if you put it in the Annie and you think she has feet, then that can remind you that the story said the water ran into the toes of her shoes and out the heels. And then you think she's not wearing high heels. She is not dressed like a princess. And that is a reason that the queen ought to test the princess or the girl. So the dirt can lead you to the gold, or at least it can get something off your mind so that you can think about what you're doing. Does that help, Teresa? I usually like to let them start with 10 in each column, and they're usually able to do that. And I've had students tell me, though, that at the end, it's easier to get 30 items than it is to get 10 at the beginning. So it'll get easier and easier. But yeah, we're not judging any answers yet. The interesting column is something related, like we're going, something about silkworms, which could end up being very relevant about the emperor parading in his suit. He paid a lot of money, like maybe as much as a car, to get these clothes. That's how hard silk is to get. That's how much it costs. So he's paid for something like a Ferrari, and now he's not going to use it. He's not going to take their what they've gotten. So does that help, Teresa, that it's about the things in the story? The new suit is made of silk. And so it is about the suit. And if we know more about the suit, we know whether he should have paraded in the new suit. Okay, so we need to talk about IEW and lost tools and how they overlap. Oh, and Victoria, let me do Stephanie's and then Victoria, you're next. And let me go back to this list for a minute. They do overlap. They're not the same lessons, but as far as the canons of classical rhetoric go, IEW's focus is on arrangement and elocution, structure and style. That's the subtitle of the book or the curriculum. And so, and they focus on outlines, and they focus on writing styles, how to add the openers and things like that. And they call them dress ups. We call them figures of speech. Some of them are the same in Lost Tools and IEW, but we always start with invention in Lost Tools, and that, just with the material logic, and that is not where we start with IEW. And so I think, I don't know, maybe Stephanie, you need to turn on your mic and tell me some more, but those are two of the canons of classical rhetoric that are in the same in Lost Tools and IEW. But you see that we do start with a really short essay, and that's why some people from IEW feel like they're going backwards, but we're not, and maybe we are for a little bit, but we have to dig this foundation in order to support the structure, because we're going to teach students how to think for themselves and avoid even the possibility of plagiarism or AI help or anything like that. Then we need to do this kind of invention, this material logic. And so it's not exactly the same as IEW, but they do dovetail. So after the first couple of essays of Lost Tools, then if you know how to add the openers for sentences to vary your sentence structure, then use it. There's nothing forbidden, except in this first essay, because we want to start with 5 sentences and we want to keep it very simple and very boring, or else you have to do it over again to make it boring. Just to make sure you have the right core. It's kind of like a rose bush in winter. You're going to cut it down to nubs, because if you don't do that, you won't get the growth in the right places. And something much more beautiful will result in the end if you're willing to cut in the beginning. I had a student once, I was teaching for a different online academy. And so I had a father, I talked to him on the phone, and then he pulled his daughter out of my Lost Tools class and put her in somebody else's. And at the end, because of the way their software worked, and I saw her persuasive essay that she wrote at the end of a year, and it was a mess. If she had stayed with Lost Tools all year, she would have had much more order in her essay, but it just didn't start fast enough for him. And we have to be patient and let these things grow. My friend said, my grandson is learning how to fall down. They say he's learning how to walk, but I say he's learning how to fall down. And that's what our students will do. And we have to let them fall down, and we have to give them time. I mean, toddlers fall down for a year. A 13-year-old won't write a mature adult argument, but they need time. They need practice, they need instruction, and they need time. We just have to keep having time and giving them time. And that's hard to do because we want results right now. We live in America. Victoria, and then Rachel. Good, Stephanie, thank you.
Yeah, you sort of answered my question. I was going to ask you on page 6 of the student workbook about how many, like, it seems from your explanation that the introduction is 1 sentence with a colon, introducing she fell asleep, a bunch of phrases. And then the proof are 3 complete sentences, and then your conclusion is just 1 sentence saying because instead of saying for these reasons. And you said something just now about 5 sentences. That's what I kind of wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any of the like mechanics there.
That's right. The first essay is 5 sentences. The first paragraph is 1 sentence, and so is the last one in this very beginning essay. And you'll see 2 more examples. Some of the we're working on fixing the typos in the book. The sample essays are helpful, but also if you watch the new level 1 videos, you'll see sample essays that don't have those typos. And so I think that those 2 more examples will help you too, when those ought to be released by tomorrow.
Thank you.
Welcome. And then Rachel, you asked, do you have advice regarding this curriculum 5 days a week format? Wondering if it's too ambitious to get through the first 3 essays in the first month. That it depends on your students. If are they 12 or are they 15? You have a block schedule, so the students will not have Lost Tools every month. Oh, having taught it many years using 3 weeks for each essay with 1 day of instruction, consider how to approach the 5-day schedule. After the first 3 essays, 2 essays a month, it'd be very full. You know what I say is, Rachel, what I do is instead of writing a syllabus, I hope you don't have to do that, but you might. And I use the table of contents, and I tell them, this is my plan. I'm going to teach these lessons, and I'm going to teach them in this order, and I will go as fast as the students can go. Because you're leading them, you're their guide. And if you make it all the way to the top of the mountain and they don't, doesn't help anybody. You have to take them with you. So Andrew Kern likes to say, if you cover the material, students cannot see it. So we want the material to cover the students. And so I would say, just see how fast they can go. You know, just start with each lesson and see how they respond, and move as quickly as you can. Good. Okay, Rachel, thanks. Yeah, it's hard if, you know, you're in a place where you don't know them. And so if you get 16-year-olds who have never used Lost Tools, but they've done some kinds of writing before, you can probably move pretty fast. But if you have, you know, if you're tutoring an 18-year-old who's never done this before, you can do the first essay in an hour like we just did. But if you have 13-year-olds who have never done any kind of writing except for thank you notes, and they have excellent handwriting, but that's it, then you're going to need to go a little more slowly. You might even do half of the book in a year. I did that once with a group of 8th graders. We met once a week. I think somebody else had a hand up. You're welcome. And I just need to, yeah, I'll just say again, I think the level 1 videos that are new and coming out now, they are based on the Lost Tools of Writing book. They are based on the past 8 years frequently asked questions from parents, from teachers in writing workshops, and that kind of thing. So they're going to address a lot more of these things in a lot more detail. So I think that's going to be a great resource that you'll have on your own. And the first one I just looked at and I thought it was a mistake. The first one's an hour long. And I think that's because it does a lot of what we just did here. And then, but the next one's only 16 minutes. So most of them are 15 or 20 minutes. A couple of them are split into 2 lessons, and you'll probably want to do that too. The sorting lesson, the arrangement lesson for the next essay, essay 2, is probably best handled in 2 sessions. It's not really a 1 lesson thing. It's part of arrangement. So in that sense, it's one canon, but it's new and it's long and it's hard. It's the most difficult intellectual skill in the book. But the video shows you how to make it very clear and concrete for your students. So they'll be taken step by step through it, and they won't struggle with it. They'll just need some time. And then the same with the refutation lesson. A refutation is sort of a mini essay within the essay. And so that's a good thing too, to spend twice as much time, 2 weeks on, or twice as much time as you would with most of the other lessons. Hi, Joy. I'm glad you got in. I just now saw your note that you couldn't, but I saw you at the beginning, so I'm not sure what happened there. We have 2 more minutes. And then next Thursday, 1 hour later than this, we have an hour of just Q&A. If you'd like to join for that, you don't have to pay for it, but you do have to register through the CiRCE website. Well, I'm glad you're all here. And look forward to staying in touch with everybody over the next year. If you live, well, I don't know, in the north, in the east, in the south, in the west, I might, I could come do a workshop for you. I would go anywhere, actually. Especially if you live in Hawaii, I would love to come there and do a workshop. Or North Dakota or South Dakota, believe it or not. But we have people all over the country to do workshops for you. But I look forward to seeing you on the forums. And yeah, and thank you, Patty, for the, there's the link. You could click on that to sign up for the free webinar for Lost Tools next week. That's an hour-long Q&A. And like I said, you can just pop in and ask one question, or you can pop out, or you can just stay the whole time and listen to other people ask questions. But I'm happy to help. I just think Lost Tools is a great path to ask our students to walk and to learn how to make wise decisions and to cultivate habits of mind that will help them to listen to each other and to think before they make judgments. And we all need it. People always ask me, where should I start? What if I've never had Lost Tools before? And, you know, or I say, well, you know, if you're 40, if you've never had level 1, start there. Or you're 50 or whatever. But it's changed me a lot. It's changed. My house is more organized than it used to be. And I think I'm a better listener. I hope so. I know people have said that about this program, and happy to see it in your hands and being passed on to students. So thank you very much for joining us. Keep in touch. Come again. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Erica. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Emily, Joy, Patty.